We're now back to our Reverend come politician Samuel Marsden. We last left our priest in 1829 when Reverend Scott was made Archdeacon of New South Wales. Now we're going to look at some of the interesting political manoeuvrings that Marsden either initiated or was part of in the early colonial period, 1822 to 1838. It's Michael Beashall, historical fiction writer here again, just to remind us that Samuel Marsden had come to the colony early in the primitive period. He had the advantage of already being there before these three governors had, and he had dealings with the previous governors, especially fighting with Macquarie. Now, of the three governors with whom he would come in contact with after Macquarie, Governor Burke, Richard Burke, was perhaps the only governor of the three with whom Marsden had a reasonable relationship. Now, Marsden was rooted in the religious beliefs of a supreme God, omnipotent and powerful, and the proper order and sinfulness of men. Now, there are many examples of Marsden getting involved in matters of virtue and sin, and then throwing these matters into the bear pit of politics. One example was Anne Rumsby, a female convict who was the servant of Dr. Douglas. Now, Mr. Hall, who headed up the Monitor newspaper, told Samuel Marsden of the fact that Dr. Douglas had tried on board a ship to New South Wales to seduce Anne. Marsden was gleeful of the scandal and tried to get Rumsby to be transferred to the female factory at Parramatta, a hellhole at the time. Again, it was the 19th century's way of blaming the women for the man's peccadillo. Anne Rumsby was married by Marsden to another convict. The magistrates at the time did not like their fellow convict-loving magistrate, Dr. Douglas, and wanted to gang up against him. When Rumsby didn't want to go to the female factory and was now married, she went back on her word at the trial against Douglas, trying to seduce her. She said it didn't all happen. She didn't want to go to the factory. The magistrates on this said that she had lied under oath, with her affidavit contending the opposite was the case, and that she should go to the female factory forthwith. Governor Brisbane took action, impressed by the integrity of Douglas, and recommended to the Colonial Secretary Goulburn not to act on Dr. Douglas. On the 24th of August, Brisbane stood firm and dismissed the whole bench of magistrates at Parramatta, and again Marsden was humiliated. Now, there is another interesting part of Marsden's character which showed it to be true to the precepts of his faith and not try to protect one of his own. Now, today we've seen a royal commission which looked at the way religious groups and others protected lawful predators in their flocks. In 1837, Marsden found out that a Mr. Yates, a reverend, was committing pedophilic acts with the Maoris. Now, even though Marsden was in failing poor health, he jumped on a ship with his wife, sailed to New Zealand in a very rough crossing, and after greeting the Maoris, who regarded him with affection, he confronted Yates with the accusation. According to Marsden's position, if Yates was guilty, he would need to go to England and go to trial. But if Yates was innocent, then Marsden would defend him to the hilt. Unfortunately, Yates told Marsden that he was guilty, and Marsden then bade him farewell to England. Now, we don't know of the resulting trial, but it does show Marsden as one who would not cover up such an act, especially in 1837. Just another example of how straight the man was. On the 12th of May 1838, Marsden lay dying in Parramatta, and 3 days later, a healthy group gathered at St John's in Parramatta to pay their respects at his funeral. The Reverend Henry Stiles of St Matthew's in Windsor made a tribute to Marsden, and I quote, "Just as other Protestant leaders went forward to unfold his gospel, so did Samuel Marsden race to New South Wales to diffuse the light of the same gospel upon the darkness of heathen sin." Marsden's view was that man was sinful and needed redemption. So ends the life of one of the most contentious characters of the first half of the 19th century in Sydney. I'm Michael Beashall, Next, we'll look at something different in our video series. Something just a little bit away from what the norm is. Thank you.